Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely deconstruct and then rebuild your understanding of health and well-being. We are diving into a concept that, well, we all think we understand, but we rarely actually do. You know, health is easily one of the most important aspects of our modern lives, yet it's arguably the most neglected. We tend to just take it for granted until it's suddenly gone. But what if our very definition of the word health is actually holding us back?
So let's kick things off by challenging a core assumption you probably hold right now. Does the mere absence of a traditional physical disease mean you are truly healthy? I mean, really think about it for a second. If you don't have a fever, a cough, or a broken bone, does that automatically toss you into the healthy category? Now, for a really long time, the answer was just an automatic yes. But as our lifestyles have become way more indoor, tech-centered, and fast-paced, the entire landscape of what actually ails us has completely transformed.
And honestly, the modern health paradox we're living in brilliantly illustrates this. Let's consider a few real-world examples. Take Rahul and Samina. They have a highly successful, super comfortable lifestyle, yet they're dealing with severe stress, sleep problems, hypertension, and type 2 diabetes. Then there's Nirav. He's a 10-year-old boy whose daily diet of junk food and soft drinks has led to severe obesity. Or Arun, a totally brilliant student whose life was derailed by a smoking addiction that ultimately required rehab. And tragically, there's Savita, just 8 years old, diagnosed with clinical depression and extreme isolation after the loss of her mother. Notice something missing here? Not a single one of these severe health crises was caused by a traditional contagious virus or bacteria. Our modern lifestyle is clearly creating profound psychological and physical struggles, proving without a doubt that health is definitely not just some simple binary state of infected or not infected.
Now, what's really wild about our basic assumptions is just how flawed they actually are. If you look at classic studies, like Bauman's back in 1961, which was later backed up by researchers like Benyamini and Leventhal, when you ask an everyday person what health is, they usually give you one of three answers. It's either feeling a general sense of well-being, not having any visible symptoms of a disease, or simply having the physical juice to perform daily tasks. We kind of just assume that if we feel fine and can drag ourselves out of bed and get to work every day, we must be perfectly healthy. But as we just saw with those case studies, this symptom-oriented, purely performance-based definition is dangerously incomplete.
Section 1. Defining true health, moving beyond the physical symptoms. Let's take a look at how the scientific community actually breaks down what it means to be unwell. Because to really understand health, we first have to speak the language of illness. Okay, so to truly wrap our heads around this, scientists actively separate these three specific terms: disease, illness, and sickness. And they do this because they mean entirely different things. A disease is strictly pathologic. It's the literal biological diagnosis your doctor gives you. But illness, that is your subjective experience. It's how you actually feel. You can totally have a biological disease without feeling any subjective illness yet. And finally, sickness is entirely about your societal role. That involves how others perceive your condition, any stigma attached to it, and the social actions you take, like, calling in sick to work. Understanding this split is our absolute first step in realizing that health involves our biology, our personal feelings, and our society, all at the exact same time. It is so fascinating to trace how our understanding of this has evolved over time. Did you know the very word health comes from the Old English word holth, which means to be whole or sound? If we jump way back to the 5th century BC, the poet Pindar defined health purely physically, as the harmonious functioning of organs. Right around that same time, Hippocrates started tossing lifestyle and environment into the mix. Fast forward a bit to 1946, and the World Health Organization made a massive leap. They officially declared that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. But then, fast forward again to 1998, and the WHO actually updated their definition to include a fourth, absolutely critical dimension: a dynamic state of complete physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Let that sink in. This update represents a massive paradigm shift in how we view the human body. True health is a combination of four distinct dimensions operating together. It's not static, it is incredibly dynamic. This explicitly tells us that health is not just the absence of disease. It requires a tangible presence of well-being across your physical body, your mind, your societal connections, and your spiritual center.
So, psychological health isn't just a simple switch you flip on or off. It's this massive interconnected ecosystem.
When we talk about subjective well-being, we are talking about life satisfaction, emotional intelligence, time management, coping skills, and resilience. It's basically a real-time evaluation of your happiness, your sense of contentment, and your sense of belongingness. You simply cannot reduce the human being down to just their physical selves and expect to achieve true wellness when all of these complex psychological factors are at play behind the scenes. Section 2. Mind, Body, and Culture. How different worlds view the body. Let's explore how vastly different cultures interpret this really complex ecosystem of health. Because your cultural background fundamentally shapes whether you view your body as a machine to be fixed or an ecosystem to be balanced. Now, to really understand the Eastern viewpoint, we first have to understand karma. This is the metaphysical principle of cause and effect. And what's incredible is that data actually shows Indian patients with life-threatening chronic illnesses like heart disease, cancer, or AIDS often attribute their condition to karmic factors. In Western countries, patients almost never make this attribution. This cultural difference completely shifts how a patient perceives their own illness and, as a result, how they approach their entire healing process. The cultural contrast here is, well, it's pretty striking. Following the Renaissance and philosophers like René Descartes, the West adopted dualism, which is this idea that the mind and body are entirely separate entities. This led to a very reductionist, mechanistic view where the body is essentially just a machine. If a germ invades, you use medicine to kill the germ, completely ignoring the patient's spiritual or emotional state. But on the flip side, look at the Eastern and traditional Indian perspective. The Sanskrit word for health is swastha, where swa means inner self and sta means conscious. So being healthy literally equates to being conscious of your inner self. Traditional systems like Ayurveda aim to heal the whole person by establishing harmony with the cosmos and nature, fully recognizing that the mind, body, and spirit are one indivisible unit. So breaking this holistic view down into practical terms, researchers Dalal and Mishra suggest that health actually requires us to move through 3 specific domains. Step 1 is restoration. This is your basic expected medical intervention to recover from pain or acute illness. But true health doesn't stop there. Step 2 is maintenance. This means actively adopting behaviors like yoga, consistent exercise, and proper nutrition just to protect your baseline. And finally, step 3 is growth. This means expanding your health to include social connections and spirituality so you don't just survive, but you actively thrive in every single sphere of life. Section 3. The health-illness continuum. Health is not a destination. Let's synthesize all of these ideas into an ultimate psychological framework and bring this all together. The huge takeaway here is that your health is absolutely not static. It is a continuous, moving spectrum. Over at one end, you have optimum, vibrant health, and at the exact opposite end, you have complete disability. And guess what? You move back and forth along this line every single day. One day you are totally full of energy, and the next you might have a terrible headache, or maybe you're facing extreme workplace stress. Because life is constantly throwing changes at you, your place on this continuum is determined by your daily psychological adaptation. 2 people can face the exact same stressful event, right? One adopts positively and moves toward optimum health, while the other gets overwhelmed and slides toward illness. I'll leave you with this thought to evaluate your own life. Are you just focusing on not being sick, or are you actively looking at your physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being? Because true health is a moving target. It demands proactive, holistic adaptation every single day. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I hope this gives you a completely new perspective on your own journey toward true wellness.